Okay, well, welcome everybody to the last formal session of the day before question and answer and before we have beers. Hillary said they saved the best for last, and that's when she thought Christina was last. But once she found out the actual agenda, her story changed. But I hope that you will find this presentation riveting and you get something out of it. If you weren't here earlier, my name is Jason Straub, and this is my colleague Vlad Uvarov, and we both work in, we came from Application Express. We still are members of the Application Express development team, but we transitioned over to Database Cloud Services, Vlad before I. So we both work on, making sure that Application Express works well in our cloud services. And so what we're going to talk about today is specifically why you as an Application Express developer should care about the Oracle Database Cloud. So I am going to talk about more than just the first cloud service that I have listed here. I'm going to talk about all of our database cloud services in general. But I'm going to focus the majority of the time on one specific one, which is one of our newer ones, and that's called the Oracle Exadata Express Cloud Service. And I think it has the most applicability to you today because it's the most approachable service. It's a very affordable service. We're going to do some demonstrations of that service. We'll do them live without a net. Hopefully they go well. If not, Mark will refund the money that you paid for the registration. Maybe give you double back. We're also going to talk about another cloud service, Oracle Developer Cloud Service, and what that means to you as an Application Express developer. We're going to see something that's very neat that we can do with this Developer Cloud Service as far as collaborating with our development teams and also doing real DevOps between like a production database or a development database and a production database and do some application deployment. So we'll demonstrate that. We'll also go into a roadmap and talk about some futures, what's coming in the Exadata Express. And then we'll go into the general question and answer area so you could ask questions about what you specifically just saw or anything that you saw today. We'll bring up the whole team and have them answer questions with me. So of course, because I said I'm going to show a roadmap and talk about some things in the future, you're seeing this slide for the 6th time today, but who's counting? So don't make any purchasing decisions on that portion. So as far as the Oracle Database Cloud Services, we really have a number of options to kind of fit any need that you might have. From the low level, for departmental type of applications or smaller applications or applications with a known workload, we have this thing called Exadata Express Cloud Service. We go all the way up to the true Exadata Cloud Service, where you get an actual piece of Exadata hardware that we run and manage for you. You can get a full Exadata, or you can get a half rack or quarter. And in between, we have something called the Database Cloud Service that's coming out with a fully managed service, but it's for those in-between types of application workloads that you might have. Now, you might be wondering, well, which ones of these cloud services can you run Application Express in? And so I will quote the boss man, Joel Coleman, who wishes he could be here today, but he wasn't able to come today because of other commitments. But he recently wrote a blog post that said very simply a profound statement, and that is Oracle Application Express runs wherever the Oracle database runs. So that means that Application Express is featured prominently in all of our database cloud services. And in fact, not just Oracle's database cloud service, Amazon recently announced that in AWS that you can build Application Express 512 applications. They specifically called out Apex 512 in their announcement, in a Twitter announcement not too long ago. So let's go into talking about a cloud service that might be of most interest to Application Express developers, and that's this Exadata Express cloud service, which is fully managed by Oracle, so you don't have to take care of DBA tasks. It's a shared database runtime, but you get your own what's called a PDB if you're familiar with the multi-tenant architecture, but you're running in a container that has other services, so other customers. But the PDB is yours and only yours. It runs on Oracle Exadata, so the world's #1 engineered system for running the Oracle database. And it has a simple price point starting at 152 euros a month. So you could get started for relatively low cost. And I'm going to talk about something in the future that might entice you even more to try out this service. So what is the database in this service? It's, as I mentioned, your own PDB, but it's version 12.2 of the database, so the latest version of the database. And in fact, what's interesting is that this cloud service was the release platform for release 2 of version 12 of the database. Larry Ellison announced it at his Sunday keynote at Oracle Open World last year. It is Enterprise Edition, plus most relevant options that you would expect to have. It also provides you with unique capabilities of Exadata, things like columnar store compression or things that are unique to Exadata, because it is running on Exadata. It's not running on some virtualized system. You also get, which is pretty neat, remote client support, so SQLnet. So that means not only can you access the service using your favorite tool like SQL Developer or SQL Plus, but you can also, we provide drivers for PHP, Java, .NET, Node.js. So you can write applications in different languages, not just Application Express, but you're most interested in Application Express. So this database, again, is managed by Oracle. It's very fast provisioning. So once you, get your service provisioned, you can provision new services just by saying create, new service, and it's just a matter of minutes before you get the email saying, it's available. So it's very fast provisioning. And starting next week, it is going to use something called universal credits, which I believe was the announcement by Larry Ellison just a couple days ago. And what that means is you'll be able to run this cloud service and pay for it by the hour. So you might just run it for a couple hours and not run it again if you wanted to really kick the tires and try it. And it's also, because it's participating in this universal credits thing, it will be part of that $300 promotion that you see on the Oracle Cloud website. So you can use those credits for the service for the first time sometime next week. I hope that's safe harbor. So if it doesn't happen, like Carson said, it could have all been a dream. Or at least tell everybody it was a dream. You weren't here. Or you're recording this, though. So how do I get data into this service? You can use a number of different ways. We're going to show one of them, the easiest way, because like Christian likes to say, I'm lazy. He doesn't say I'm lazy. He says, he's lazy. But anyway, we're going to do the easy way. But you could use SQL Loader if you have very large data sets and you need to load very large data sets. You can use SQL Loader. SQL Developer, that's the easy way. So you could just simply drag and drop from a local database to the cloud, or from cloud to cloud, or actually cloud back to local. You can also use, since Application Express is included, SQL Workshop import or export. You can do simple DML, so you can have a big script that has a bunch of insert statements and connect via SQLnet using your favorite client and run those scripts. And it also includes ORDs, which allows you to do REST over HTTP. So you could do that to load data in. You could do that to get data out. We just saw Carson with some very exciting possibilities. So when the new version of ORDS is being used in the cloud, you'll be able to have, and you get Apex 5.2 is released, you can just say remote database and choose your Oracle Cloud database, and then you have options to create interactive reports or charts or things like that, just like it was a local database. So let's do a demonstration, enough talking about it, and let's actually see this Exadata Express cloud service. So we're going to look at a scenario where we have two services and one's development and one's production. So let me just make sure I'm still connected to the internet, which it appears I am. And so I go ahead and I'm going to sign in to my account. And I'm going to be taken to this dashboard. And in this dashboard, you're going to see all your cloud services here at once that are associated with something called your identity domain. And here I have Exadata Express, which is what we're going to look at here very soon, but I also have a database schema service, so just the traditional, the first database schema service that we had. And I also have this developer service, which we're going to look at a little bit later. So I click into Exadata Express. And I will see the service instances that I have available. And we're going to be concerned with, for the demo, dev and prod. So we have multiple Exadata Express instances. I could create a new instance if I want, just by clicking on Create Service Instance. Maybe I say in between dev and prod, I want to do stage. I could create a whole new stage database, service, and then I would get the email in a matter of minutes saying it's available. Let me first look at what we have in dev. So to do that, I just open the Service Console, and here you will see, and I'll prove it to you, an Application Express application, which is the Service Console that allows me to manage this service. So if I go to Develop, and we'll come back to the Service Console and show some more of the management things, you see I have access to various portions of Application Express, client development. So here I can enable client access or disable it. So not allow people to connect over SQLnet or enable it. To connect over SQLnet, I'll need some client credentials, and we'll download some of those later. But I also see tools and utilities, ways to download these tools and utilities, languages and framework. But I'm going to go straight into Application Express, the app builder, and show you what I have here and talk a little bit about this scenario that we're going to do. I have this employees application, which I'm going to run. And it's not based on the emp table. It's based on the employees table. So I've already one-upped all the emp demos. And it's just a very simple application. You know, it's got the report page. It's got a form. I can create new rows. But now, let's say I'm done with this application and I've provisioned my production, Exadata Express service. I want to get this to production. So what I would do is two things. First, let's go to SQL Workshop and actually see where that employees table is. Let's go to Object Browser. And you'll see I have this ugly looking schema name. I didn't put it in the ugly looking schema, nor did I put it in Vlad1. Somebody's been in my service. I put it in the HR schema. So there's an HR schema here, and there's an employees table. So let's look at what we have going on in production. So I open up my production service console. Let's go to Develop, App Builder. First thing we'll notice, it's a brand new service, very greenfield. I just have the sample database application. If I go to SQL Workshop and I go to Object Browser, all I have is that generic schema that was provisioned with the service. So we got to do two things. We got to get the application from dev. So we should all know how to do that pretty easily. We just go and say export. But the second thing we'll have to do is we will have to get that schema in prod and as well as the data. And we're going to do it the easy way. So first, let me just export this file somewhere, which is the employees application. I'm going to save that into this folder. So I have the application. Now I need to get the data over to production. So I'm going to go back to my prod service console, and I'm going to go under Manage. And under Manage, I'm going to go to Database Schema. And right from here, in this service console, I could create a new schema. So I'll create an HR schema. And then I will leave this checked to allow access from Apex. So as soon as I create this schema, it will be associated with my Application Express workspace, which is going to allow me to build then applications or import that application on. So I create the database schema. So cool, now I have that. Now I want to get the data in. So in order to connect to my production instance, I need to download something called client credentials. And I provide a password here. And this is going to be a password that's going to be used for Java type of programs. It has a Java key store that requires a password. And so I have to remember this password as well. I promise I'm not making it all the same password. That would not be secure. So I say download, and I wait a couple seconds. Vlad said I should pre-download these just in case. No, but we're okay. So I'll say save file. Let me put it in this Apex Day folder. And so now I have some zip file somewhere. So let's just take a look at that real quick. So if I say unzip-l client credentials.zip, what you'll see is I have this cwallet.sso. So I have this certificate that I can use, that I'll be using to connect. You'll see that I have a tnsnames.aura and a SQL.aura. And so in the tnsnames.aura, oh, I didn't unzip it. But anyway, if I catted that and displayed the contents of it, all it would be is it would have an alias for me to access, and it would be db access is what it is. I could change that. I could take this, these files and unzip it into, if I was using SQL Plus or Instant Client, into the network admin account. But I'd rather use SQL Developer, and it's much easier in SQL Developer. So here in SQL Developer, you can see up here that I already have a connection to EECS-dev to the HR schema. Let me just double check that I get the connection. It's taken a little while to get to Chicago and get the data back. Should have provisioned one in an EMEA data center. Oh, yes. That's coming very soon, isn't it? All right, so you'll see that I have tables here under HR. Actually, I have one table and it's employees. So what I want to do is I want to add a connection. And I'll call this HR on EECS-prod, connect to HR. And for connection type, I choose Cloud PDB, not SSH, but Cloud PDB. And then I just point to that zip file that I downloaded. Here under Apex Day. And then I provide the password that I used when I downloaded that. Let me test. Success, that's good. So let me save and connect. And so now I have this HR on EECS prod. So if I unroll that connection, I believe I did that. There we go. And I go to tables, there should be nothing there yet, right? So the idea is I'm going to drag this employees from my dev instance down to my prod instance and drop it. And then I could have different options on doing that. I could copy the data, which I want to do, append it if the data already existed there, replace things. I'm just going to choose the defaults here. And she keeps thinking a video probably would have worked better here. But that's fine. It's not like it's hot in here or anything. And after a little bit of time, I get a log of what happened here and what was created. Looks like everything was created just fine. If I now go to my prod connection and I unroll tables, I do see employees. And I should be able to click on data and see some data, and sure enough I do. So now I have the schema there, I've got the data there, I exported the application. It's easy enough to put that on production. So initially, all I wanted to do was move the schema and the data. I'm going to use something else that I'm about to talk about to actually deploy the application to production. And I'm going to use some really cool DevOps continuous integration experience. That was all planned. All right, so that leads me to the Oracle Developer Cloud Service, which is cloud-based development platform, enables agile development methodology, including DevOps automation. It includes things like source code repositories like Git and Maven. It also includes continuous integration engine such as Hudson, which we may use here shortly. Some of the service features are that it is, automatically provisioned. It's all web-based, so you administer the developer cloud service in a web-based manner. It includes things so that your developers can collaborate on projects. So I mentioned the source code repositories, but you can also set up code reviews, which come in handy. You can do task tracking. It contains a wiki that you can do. The service is integrated with IDEs, including JDeveloper, Eclipse, NetBeans for Apex developers, SQL Developer. Really the only integration is the ability to interact with a Git repository. It is also deployed automatically, and when you get an Exadata Express service, you will also get an Oracle Database Cloud service. And there's workflow to ensure that you have proper building and testing. So some of the advantages of using the Oracle Developer Cloud service are that since everything's already set up for you, you can eliminate setup and startup time. You don't have to set up your own code repository mechanism. You don't have to set up your own Hudson instance. You don't have to set up your wikis or any type of ticketing issue tracking systems. That's all taken care of. So that reduces your costs, your dev operation costs. You can improve team collaboration. I mentioned you could do code reviews and things like that. And you can produce better applications faster with the continuous integration, continuous build type of philosophy. So let's do a demonstration of the Developer Cloud service that hopefully is going to save my demo. And just in case that doesn't work, I did shoot a video beforehand. So let me go back to Firefox here and go back to my service detail and go back to the dashboard where we saw that Developer Cloud service. And let me go ahead and click this to get into my service. This is just a dashboard to the service, but then when I actually click the service URL, that's when I get into Developer Cloud Service, which so far is not under some type of planned downtime maintenance. So let me just create a new project. It's very quick to do. I'll just call this the Apex Day project. And I'm going to create a project with an initial repository. And so I want this project to have source code control. And so I'm going to create it with a repository. So when I click Finish, you can see that my project Apex Day is being provisioned. And this happens relatively quickly with all the things that are happening. It's setting up source code repository, a wiki, it's a Hudson instance, project tracking, issue tracking. Very good. So now I get into the dashboard, and really all the dashboard shows me is, gives me a quick list of what just went on. So if some interesting things were going on, like a code review or something like that, I would see it here. If a build was happening, I would see results here, or just see that it happened, and I could drill down. If I click in code, this gives me access to the Git repository here. And as I mentioned, there's like an issue tracker. So I could create a new issue and assign it to other developers if I want. And I also have a wiki. But what's very interesting is I have this deploy tab here. Build tab here. Which allows me to create jobs, and this is Hudson jobs. So what would be nice is if we had a way between our two Exadata Express instances, one dev and one prod, to click a button and have the dev application exported and then connect to prod and automatically import that over there. And that would be very nice to be able to accomplish, and we're going to try very hard to do that. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click new job, but the first thing is, well, let me just do it, and I will call this deploy to prod, no spaces allowed. And if we look at build steps, one of the build steps is invoke SQL.cl. And you'll notice that there's this way for me to provide a credentials file. Remember that zip file that I downloaded? Well, that's how I connect to these services through the developer cloud services with that same zip file. But somehow I got to get the zip file to accessible by this build job. So I could do it in a couple ways. I could have build parameters and have it upload, but I'd have to upload it every time. So that isn't a one button push operation. Or I can reference files that are in my source code repository. So that's the way we're going to actually store our credentials so we can connect. So if I go back to my project homepage, let's leave that page. You'll see under repositories, excuse me, I have this apexday.get, and I have a URL to it. So I can just go ahead and copy that URL. And I am going to do it command line because I think it's quicker actually than using, one other way I could do it is through SQL Developer, and I can interact with my Git repository, but I find it to be quicker to do it this way. So I could say git clone and then paste that URL. But because my credentials have an @ sign in it and I don't know exactly how to deal with it, it's escaped on the command line, I'm going to actually just remove that part of it and I have it prompt me for my username. Oh, it must have stored my credentials from before. It did. So if I go into this Apex Day folder, remember one of my options was to initially seed the repository with some readme.md file. So there I can see it. So now what I can do in this folder that has my Git repository is I can copy those zip files both for dev and for prod into this directory and then push that back up so that it's in my code repository that Developer Cloud Service has access to. So I am going to copy files that I did pre-download. So let me get the dev ones here. And let me get the production ones here. So now I do git add, git commit all, adding credentials, provide a comment here for the check-in. Now I just say git push, and that should push these credentials back to the Git repository, which my Developer Cloud Service can see here. So if I go back to the home page or the code page, I should now see I have these both in my repository. So now in my build jobs, I can reference them. So let's go back and let's go back to work on this deploy to prod job. I'm going to say that this job is going to use source control, and that's Git, and it's this initial repository that was created for me. And now I'm going to do my build steps. So let's add a build step. the first build step is going to be connecting to dev and exporting application 102. And then that was credentials dev.zip. When I tab out of here, it's automatically going to pick up DB access as my connect string. If I happen to change that and zip the file back up, then I would just change it there. And then I'm going to say the source is inline SQL. I could also run SQL files that I also uploaded perhaps to my Git repository, but I'm just going to do inline SQL for this example. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spool something called f102.sql. And because this is SQL CL, I have access to the SQL CL extensions. So it's not just SQL Plus commands. I can do things like apex export 102, which would be the export application 102. And then I just simply say spool off. So that's all I really need to do in my dev environment. So let's add a build step to connect to prod. Invoke SQL CL. Connect to HR. And this time, I'll reference the prod credentials. I'll do inline SQL here. The first thing I'm going to do is actually get something to copy and paste out of here. I'm going to have to use the Apex application package to actually set the workspace ID, because the workspace IDs of my prod and dev don't match up. But I'm going to show you soon how you can actually, in the future, most likely be able to get those two to match up. So let me copy this line here and paste it in here. And as I mentioned, that is simply using the Apex application install package and setting the workspace ID to what the actual workspace ID is in prod. So after I do that, I simply then invoke that file that I spooled, which was an export of my application 102. And that should be it. So let's go ahead and click Save. And now, after I have this set up, this should be the one-button deployment of taking my changes from development, my Exadata Express development service, and deploying it to my production Exadata Express service. So I click Build Now. And I probably should have clicked that before I started saying all that. That way I could have had a little bit more of a buffer, because it's going to take a little bit of time. So now you see that the job is queued. So hopefully we'll start seeing something here shortly and get a progress bar. Which is a good UI pattern. And in the meantime, does anybody know any good jokes? Definitely a video would have worked better. But I like doing live demos because, you know, there's a little bit of the thrill involved in it, you know. It's a little bit riskier.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now we're running. So we get two progress indicators, right? We got this progress indicator and we got this wheel spinning. So something really is going on. And it is getting warmer in here too, so. All right, so while this is running, I can go ahead and click the console and take a look at the console output. And you can see it hasn't gotten very far. All it has done so far is checked out my Git repository that I said was associated with this build job. And it staged it somewhere so that Hudson could access it. And then once it does that, it connects to SQL CL. It connected to dev. It's running this command, so spool, this temp f102.sql. It's running the apex export 102 command from SQL CL and then spooling off. And at the end of that, you'll see the output of that spool. And now you'll see that it's connected to production. Here's connected. It ran this PL SQL block to set this workspace ID, and then it ran that spool file. And at the end, it says success. All live without a net. So now, let's go back to prod. Let's go back to app builder. And remember, the scenario was we didn't even have the application 102 here in prod because I couldn't import it for some unknown reason. And I click run, and you'll see that I have the application. How about a round of applause? So the original scenario was I was going to, in dev, open up the theme roller and really jack up the application and make it look horrendously ugly. And then I was going to create that build job to deploy the horrendously ugly application here. But I think this is good enough. Who's with me? All right, because you don't want to be against me. All right. So that was the riveting demo. Let's talk about the roadmap a little bit. So we're going to be offering new, remember I had mentioned that, because of the size of the data that you're capped at previously, which was 50 gigabytes, it was only, the Exadata Express service was more geared towards, smaller type data sets. Well, we're offering some new, larger shapes that offer up to 1 gigabyte, so a terabyte, 1,000 gigabytes, 1 million, no. So a terabyte of data and more compute. So you have access to more Oracle processing units or processor units. We're also going to allow you to export and import data pump DMP files into your Oracle storage cloud service. As well, we're going to give you the ability to create multiple workspaces in the Exadata Express cloud service, something that Christian worked very hard to get done. And we're also going to have, the way you're going to do that is you're going to have internal administration access, just like you do on your own local Apex instance, but it's going to be factored, right? So you won't be able to do everything that you can with your on-prem Application Express instance, but you'll be able to do some of that. And so this is just a screenshot of what your new choices are for the new instance types. If you can, probably can't see that. But anyway, there's the X250, X500, which gives you the 2 OCPUs, and then the 1000 and 1000 IM, which is an in-memory. So you also get some in-memory storage as well with that. So the new service console options, you'll see export to cloud storage that I just mentioned, and as well you'll see down here the link to instance administration. Here's some screenshots of this one's doing an export to the Oracle Storage Cloud Service. So you specify the storage container using the URL you're provided when you get the service, and then a container name. It'll create the container if it doesn't already exist. If you check that box, you provide your credentials here, a name for the export file, and then you choose which schemas that you want to export. So you might not need to export all the schemas. You might just be interested in HR, for example, in this case. And then If you can export, you'll be able to import. And initially, what happens when you log into your Oracle store, provide your Oracle Storage Cloud credentials, cloud service credentials, you'll just see DMP, or not DMP files, but files of the export that you have done from Exadata Express Cloud Services. But the plan is, beyond this, to allow you to take arbitrary exports from Data Pump, like from your other cloud services, such as the database cloud service, and import them here into Exadata Express as well. So if you want to get started and learn more about the Developer Cloud Service, you just go to cloud.oracle.com/developer service. Same thing with the database services, cloud.oracle.com/database. If you like what you saw, go to shop.oracle.com and just buy it, or use those cloud credits I was talking about maybe next week. And with that, that concludes my portion of the presentation. I appreciate you all sticking with me through that painful and arduous demo, but we got it to work, so that I think is the important part. Thanks.